Hello and welcome to The Hash for Monday, February 15th. We are going to be talking about the latest in crypto news. I am joined today by CoinDesk senior reporter Brady Dale, Jen Sanasie of Streambed Media, CoinDesk privacy reporter Ben Powers, and the great Naomi Brockwell, crypto journalist extraordinaire. We're going to start with you, Naomi. You're looking at the dark web today. What do you have for us?
Looking at the dark web, so Joker's Stash, which is a notorious dark web marketplace, usually for stolen credit cards and debit cards, it has closed shop as of the start of this month. Now, it's estimated that the site's owner walked away with a cool 60,000 Bitcoin, which roughly equals around $2 billion, which is a huge amount. Now, the site actually announced last month that it would close on February 15th, but according to Elliptic, it closed much earlier than that, about 12 days earlier, unexpectedly. And what's interesting to me about this whole situation is that the site used blockchain decentralized DNS, which has made it notoriously difficult for law enforcement to shut down. They tried in December. It ended up, because of the way that blockchain DNS works, they actually can't seize the site because people can just redirect things pretty easily because everything's decentralized. So I want to chat a little bit about that. I'm going to throw this to Ben. From your privacy standpoint, what are your thoughts on decentralized DNS and on the takedown, on the shutdown of this marketplace?
I mean, I think the kind of closure of it just signals the guys moved on to different things, right? As for the decentralized nature of it, I think obviously that was really helpful in terms of evading a single point of failure or point of control that law enforcement could access. I'm really curious to see what comes next. I mean, there's always going to be marketplaces like this on the dark web, so I'm curious to see if anybody or any entity, pseudonym, is going to step up and put something together, because unfortunately, there's always going to be a market for these credit card numbers, and there's always going to be sort of laundering and middlemen that it goes through. So I'm curious to see where this goes next now that this huge marketplace is shut down.
Well, I was always very interested in when OpenBazaar shut down, right? Because I thought that would be the next thing. I thought that a decentralized marketplace was going to be where people would migrate to for exactly this reason. So no one could shut down and walk away with a ton of users' money. And then it just never really took off. Why is that? Brady, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think OpenBazaar, I only messed around with it one time and I was like, this is cool, but really hard. And when I want comic books, eBay is fine. So I guess I feel like if you didn't have a strong motivation to go elsewhere, like you were doing something illicit, then, people didn't have a lot of motivation to try something weird like a decentralized, open eBay.
But like you look at the history of dark web marketplaces after Silk Road shut down, you immediately got like 20 that replaced it that sprung up. And you got Silk Road 2.0, you had all these scam sites that just came in and stole a huge amount of money and disappeared with it. I would have thought that OpenBazaar would be like, it was going to thrive for exactly that reason, because people are so used to putting their money into things that ended up being scams, and the owners just closed shop and walked away with money, but it never took off. It was always surprising to me.
I mean, for me,
they were really trying to be.
Go for it.
Sorry, they were really trying to be like normal goods, right? I mean, that was the thing about OpenBazaar, which I think made it hard when they were marketing like, "Hey, sell your artwork and your pottery on here." That just didn't look appealing to the sector that made the Silk Road work, right?
I think just to me, it's really interesting that this is one of the few instances where a dark web cyber criminal has retired on their own terms. That's something that Elliptic, which is the blockchain analytics firm that ended up producing this report, they made note of that, right? This was not done by an apparent law enforcement action. This is just, hey, I made $2 billion in Bitcoin. I'm hanging up the spikes. I'm putting away the hacker mask, and I am moving on just to be a normal Bitcoin whale out in the world, unbothered. So I think that to me is interesting, that like they were able to go out on their own terms, even after being flagged, after having these transactions flagged and even available for public analysis. So that to me was sort of just the interesting, compelling human story that like maybe we'll see like the movie treatment of like Joker Stash in a few years. What Joker Stash is doing now in their lavish retirement. So that to me was like the compelling bit of this story. I don't know if you have any takes on that, Naomi. If there's a compelling background that you'd like to learn more about here.
Well, I think that it's not clear whether Interpol or the FBI shut this down. We just don't have information about it. It's very opaque what went on. The same thing happened in December when it seemed like one of the domains was seized, but then they just redirected. But it's like, it's not actually clear that it was seized by the FBI. Like, there's a lot of strange things surrounding Joker Stash. But I agree that if it is correct that the FBI didn't shut this down, it is interesting that whoever was running it was like, okay, that's enough. I don't want to push my luck. I'm just going to end it, not going to put any more identifiable data out there that might be linked back to me. I'm not going to test things. What were you going to say, Zach?
I was going to say, I'm just taking Elliptic's word for it. They noted it in their post, but I'd imagine that they don't know for sure. But I will trust those blockchain sleuths that they did their sleuthing correctly. So good stuff. I think we're gonna change gears here from the dark net to the regular net. We're going to go talk about MicroStrategy now. So MicroStrategy, which is the publicly traded business intelligence firm, it's got like 2,000 employees. It's actually a big company based in Northern Virginia. So they famously have bought something like 71,000 Bitcoin. It is a huge part of their treasury. It has made CEO Michael Saylor sort of a Bitcoin figurehead in this last little cycle. And now they're finally sort of building a business around it, right? They're going to do a blockchain analytics play, blockchain data play related to Bitcoin. So I guess I'm going to throw it to Brady. I think it's like now is the moment where maybe MicroStrategy becomes more interesting as something more than a figurehead. And I'm wondering if this is sort of like a token gesture to giving back to the space, or if this changes your view of what MicroStrategy has to offer for the industry.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's funny how all these companies that, get heavily into crypto just sort of feel like they have to make their mark. I mean, we also see this with Block One. They have thousands of Bitcoin too, right? And they are saying they're going to do things to make Bitcoin work better for everybody. But it seems like probably everyone's best bet in all of these cases is to just save their money or buy more Bitcoin with it, because probably what these big companies will contribute will be not really what normal people in the crypto world want. But, if they want to try to earn some street cred, I guess that's cool. Go them. But it'll probably not amount to much. It would be my guess.
That sets up my favorite footnote in the MicroStrategy history, where Michael Saylor was first attuned to the promise of this technology when they sold the voice.com domain name to Block One for their social media
Yeah.
venture. They sold
I
it
did
for
not know
And then
that
and then
happened.
$30 million
and then
to Block
and
One.
then
Yes.
voice.com changed social media forever. We all know that, and it's been
The
huge.
rest is history. The rest is history.
Yep.
So yeah,
So mean.
uh,
I mean, I said it did. It's been huge. Everyone's moving there.
It's okay. So Naomi, I want to kick it to you. Sort of talk to me about, Saylor as, a Bitcoin figurehead. Danny Nelson, who's our local Saylor whisperer, slipped Saylor Mania past me in the edit of that piece, and I was pretty pleased with that coinage. What is the state of Saylor Mania, and what's your take on where this company is going?
So he has been in the spotlight, as you said, because they just were trailblazers in terms of saying we are allocating a portion of our Treasury reserve assets to Bitcoin. We think this is a better store of value than US dollar. Like, this was huge news because they are, the largest publicly traded business intelligence company, right? And so this was big news. And then Michael Saylor goes and gets Elon involved, and then he puts more and more money. It just keeps increasing the reserve holdings. And it has made him a figurehead. I think what's interesting about this is now he's become this expert, where he's this figurehead, this talking head about Bitcoin. And a lot of people who aren't in the space are just kind of looking to him for advice. That's always an interesting phenomenon to me, because there are so many people in crypto who just know so much more about what's going on. But because he's the head of this very successful and prominent company, this prominence in another field lends credence to whatever he says about Bitcoin, right? That's always like a difficult thing for me to grasp. Is like when an economics expert starts talking about why, like something outside of economics is important. And it's like, you still take his word for it because he's important in this other field, but I don't know whether we should be holding as much weight as what he says about Bitcoin. That's just my thought there. I think he's a net positive for the space, all the advocacy he has done, but I would just caution people, there are probably better experts that they could be looking to.
Well, it's the ultimate crypto skin in the game, right? When you buy over $1 billion of Bitcoin, you are entitled to a little bit of cred.
Right.
Ben, I saw your hand go up, and I wanted to shoot it to you.
No, I know. Wonderful cynic that I am. Isn't this just also sort of a self-serving play in some ways, right? We talked about this, they've amassed this huge amount, and then you want to bring, kind of business strategy and, Bitcoin analytics into this and start building this out in a way that, can advance the use cases, advance kind of the Bitcoin narrative as a whole. And that, in one sense, could also just be you trying to do what you can to drive up the prices, bring this maturity to the space and everything else. So that might be another way of looking at this, is that this could just help drive up the price of Bitcoin for them. And because they have so many, like, why not?
Oh yeah, they definitely have a lot of it. I mean, it definitely maybe it's a data point in the favor of, hey, MicroStrategy isn't just a Bitcoin proxy stock, or hey, MicroStrategy isn't just a Bitcoin hedge fund. They're doing something now. Jen, I'm curious for your take on this. Like, what's the view of MicroStrategy from where you sit? Like, what about this is compelling, and where are you watching this company go?
Well, there's several things and several questions that have popped up into my head as we've been chatting. And I guess the first one is, if we're not looking to MicroStrategy and people like Michael Saylor for information on Bitcoin, Naomi, you were talking about the fact that there are people in this space who are much more informed, who people in the mainstream audience should be listening to more. Who are those people? Like, let's put our audience on. Where do they go for information if it's not looking to people like this for information?
Well, they
about
obviously go to CoinDesk, right?
Yeah.
Where the experts hang out. They go to the hash, they get the rundown. No, I think there are lots of people who've built their brand on really understanding the tech. They're looking outside of the space, not just at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a great store of value, but there are other things to look at. There's DeFi, which I think is super interesting. Brady, you're an expert in that field, a great resource for people to learn about all of that stuff. And I think that there's a lot more to the crypto space than people realize. And when we have talking heads that are just like, Bitcoin store of value, I think that's awesome. I want to just expand beyond that now.
I guess I feel like sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Brady, take it, man.
I guess I just feel like the one thing Saylor was able to do, which maybe other people didn't have this expertise, is he was able to say to Elon, like, yeah, you really can buy $1 billion worth of it in a pretty short amount of time. And they probably slid into the DMs and was like, here are the guys who helped me do it. And that was like, not everybody could do that.
Got it.
No,
Let's take a break.
True.
Let's take a break on that, and we are going to come back and talk about BitPay sliding into Apple's DMs with a wallet integration that is kind of cool. Coming up right next after this break. Thanks, gang.
I can't think of a more important story than this one to be telling. We're talking about the transformation of money itself. So to tell this story, right, the most significant story in finance that's around, we need new mediums, new ways to reach people, new ways to reach this global audience, the human beings for whom this is going to be most important. So this is why we're really excited to launch CoinDesk TV, because it's another way to reach people. It's another way to communicate. It brings to life the stories that sometimes can be difficult to access. This is a huge opportunity to tell a very, very important story that reaches a wide audience that has the potential to change everything. This is a huge opportunity to do this differently, and CoinDesk TV is going to sit right in the middle of all of that.
So we were just talking about Bitcoin as a store of value, but I want to take it to something a little bit smaller and see how we could actually be transacting with it on a regular basis. Now, on Friday, BitPay announced that they're going to be adding support for Apple Pay. BitPay is a Bitcoin payment services provider. And I thought this was interesting because what that means in practice is that you could take your BitPay, MasterCard, prepaid debit card and add it into your Apple Pay wallet and transact it, anywhere Apple Pay is accepted. Now, I thought this was interesting because one, this seemed to be a way that people could use this on a daily basis. And two, because Apple has traditionally been quite wary and quite exclusionary around crypto, particularly within its apps. But I'd be curious to hear more about you all's thoughts from this. Is this, progress in this area, or is this just a little bit more of smoke and mirrors, given particularly that, BitPay is converting the cryptocurrencies into fiat, which is then used. It's not quite exactly a Bitcoin to Bitcoin transaction, for example.
Well, I think there's definitely a difference between merchants accepting crypto natively, which is awesome. And we had a huge boom like 2013, and that started to go downhill by 2015, and it kind of disappeared by 2017. It's like non-existent, right? So I feel like the merchant wave that we thought was going to come never really happened, and it may just be starting again in other cryptocurrencies. What's interesting about companies like BitPay is that you don't need the merchants to accept it for people to live on crypto. I know a lot of people who want to live entirely on crypto. They want to live off the grid. They, want to make their purchases that aren't tracked by credit card companies. And so, and they also don't want to store their value in something that's losing 2% a year, right? And so I think that for people like that, this is tremendously helpful because they don't need every place to accept crypto for them to be able to live their life, according to their own value system, which is really, really cool. So essentially, it's just, if you have a BitPay prepaid MasterCard, then you can add that to your Apple Pay, and one more option. So it's kind of part of the option. Whatever word I'm looking for, of like, you've got Bit Refill, you've got Purse, you've got all of these things that act as intermediaries, right? And I think BitPay is providing a great service there.
Yeah, when I read this
and it's
story,
also interesting. Oh, yep.
Okay, I was going to say I went on over to Reddit and Twitter, and a lot of people were saying, well, this is just, if we're turning our crypto to fiat and then using it on Apple Pay, isn't this the same as just putting any prepaid card into Apple Pay? But Naomi, I totally am with you, and I echo what you're saying. I think this is a much bigger step than those people are seeing when it comes to using crypto in a more mainstream way. It's the next step towards the future that we've all been talking about on this show, I think.
It's true. And Twitter and Reddit are usually the loudest voices in the room, or at least online.
Right.
But I'm curious too. They also, BitPay announced that Google Pay and Google Pay and Samsung Pay are also going to be supported in this way within this quarter, I believe. So it seems to be an expansion into multiple sort of payment ecosystems. And, is this the way that this is going to go? Like the future in terms of providing this optionality, even if it's not, directly a peer-to-peer payment system like I'm sure some Bitcoin evangelists would envision?
I'll take a stab at that.
No?
I think that I didn't hear the exact question there, but maybe that's just my own bad. But I think the interesting thing here is that the payments use case won't die, right? I think this is the latest sign. There's been maybe 3-4 of these, I think, in the last couple of weeks of big names trying to make crypto payments work. We had MasterCard saying that they would accept crypto payments on network. I'm blanking on the other example, but we've had a bunch of these in recent weeks where there seems to be a renewed amount of interest. I guess I'm always kind of curious about who's driving that interest, right? Are those crypto native people that are demanding, as Naomi said, to live off the financial grid? Is it really that large of a contingent that these companies are responding to, or are they seeing something that we aren't? Because I guess the payments use case again has been sort of overshadowed in recent years by the store of value use case. So yeah, I don't know, Ben. Did that get to the heart of
Kind
that?
of, yeah. It's something that I'm trying to wrap my head around here too, about the importance of this announcement and what it could mean going forward. Naomi, you mentioned the off the grid aspect in it. Are you really off the grid if you're buying a card and then putting that in your Apple Pay and your smartphone and then using that a lot? And so I wonder how much that gets away from people that might want to be avoiding some of the tracking measures that the traditional financial system envisions. But I'm not sure. Brady, you got any thoughts to jump in with here?
Well, I just think it's important to understand that for merchants, crypto in particular is tough to account for because it's so volatile, and that just makes their books a nightmare. But as we see more and more currencies coming in DeFi that have more stable value, I think that they might be more interested. But this is just an obvious step on the road to mobile payments, walled gardens getting on the right side of Satoshi. It's going to happen eventually.
No, fair enough. And so speaking about volatility, I think, Jen, you have a story about the people that are suffering from some recent volatility.
Yeah, so we heard about the GameStop investors who won big, but we haven't really heard a lot about the ones who lost big. So this morning on the Wall Street Journal, they published a story about Salvador Vergara, a 25-year-old who took out a $20,000 personal loan, bought shares, and then watched them plummet by 80%. So I want to talk to you guys. I know I'm constantly talking about social media and the attention economy and the YOLO and FOMO that comes with social media when we talk about trading, whether that's in the traditional stock market or in crypto. And so when I tell this story, what are the initial thoughts that come to your minds?
Gosh, I am going to start this one off. I have a lot of thoughts about the whole GameStop thing. I think that you have some pretty savvy traders in Wall Street Bets who understand what a short squeeze is, and then they build this narrative around it that's like, yeah, we're doing this moral thing. It's great. Jump on board. And so all of these people are like, yeah, I want to be part of the movement. I want to be part of the club. I want to feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. And they all jump in and they don't realize what's actually going on. They're not as savvy at investing. At the end of the day, someone's holding the bags, and all we really hear about is we brought those hedge funds down because they're terrible, all of that stuff. What actually happened was you had a bunch of very savvy traders who understand how to pull off a very sophisticated move, and a bunch of people who piled on who didn't understand it, people who took out giant loans like that breaks my heart to see people who thought that they were going to be part of something, who are like, we're all in this together, this is only ever going up, let's show them. And they don't realize that you're just playing into someone else's agenda there. People who wanted to make a bunch of money short squeezing someone who succeeded, and then all these other people who joined later are left holding the bags. It makes me really sad to see that.
The first thing,
yeah, don't invest on margin unless you've got the money.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind for me, and maybe my mind is just polluted by having covered crypto for a few years. First thing was just wrecked. You know, this guy, like, you know, did something he shouldn't have done and got wrecked. And I think it's like a data point for me that sort of, I guess, is becoming sort of my operating theory of crypto, and that it's like sort of a year or two sort of ahead of mainstream financial stuff. So I think plenty of people probably saw this story out of the last crypto bull run in late 2017 and early 2018. And now we're sort of seeing a similar narrative around stocks, stocks as shitcoins, people pumping and dumping, and necessarily people getting hurt along the way. And I think that, to me, is like something that sort of the broader financial press needs to reckon with, in a way that I think the crypto press did after that last bull run of 2017. I'll toss that to Brady. Do you have any thoughts on sort of that broader narrative arc that we're seeing with meme stocks sort of replicating the pump and dump of an earlier era in crypto?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, what was that Leonardo DiCaprio movie about the penny stocks? I mean, it's not like equities haven't seen this before. The thing that I thought seeing this story is, if you piled into Bitcoin in late 2017 and it went down to $3,000 and you sold, you were really sad. But that was a case where if you'd held on till now, it would have been, a long, dark winter. But you'd have come out great, because the difference is when you're pumping, a legacy company that's probably at the end of its useful life, like that is probably only going to go one way, one time. Whereas with crypto, there's still a lot of room on these things. There's a lot of stuff that became garbage for a while that's actually starting to play out well now. So it's just a whole different story in crypto.
I think it also just points to like the kind of failings of the narrative, what we get told and how we're supposed to behave, particularly here in America, where it's like, if you work hard, you'll get by, you'll be able to save enough, your wages will increase. And like, we see people making kind of desperate plays for like grabbing profit where they can, because in so many ways, like that's the only way to try and get ahead here. I do think there is some truth to the narrative about like striking back at hedge funds and just people that are making money over money over money, while the vast majority of people in the US, like, they don't see their wages rising exponentially or anything like that. This guy was hoping to retire early. There are people who have a hard time retiring at all these days. And so, it just kind of shows the ends to which he was willing to go to try and achieve that goal, because he didn't see a viable way for getting to it in his own life. And I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. I wonder if the GameStop story is over or not. We'll have to see. But we're going to take a short break. And coming up, has Chia figured out how to make at-home mining cool again? That story up next.
It's been a long time since someone could mine Bitcoin at home, but in the early days, folks were just doing it on their home computers, and that was really kind of what Satoshi Nakamoto thought would happen all along. It didn't actually turn out to be that way, but folks used to mine all the time. So, we were talking in the prior segment about people putting money in to make it, but it used to be that you could put in some work, even if that was the work of your machines, to make a profit. Well, a new cryptocurrency that was announced in 2018, Chia, which is launched by Bram Cohen, the creator of BitTorrent, is promising a new way that they think will continue to be mineable at home, onto the far future. It's called Proof of Space and Time, and it should launch on mainnet on March 17th. And when that happens, they tell me it's extremely easy. You download a piece of software for your Windows or your Mac, and it'll set aside some space on your machine, and it will mine Chia tokens from there. And if you think this sounds, really weird and unlikely to work out, it's worth noting that, Naval Ravikant, the noted investor who founded AngelList, told me in an email about this, that Bram is one of the great protocol designers up there. He said with Satoshi and Vitalik, he created BitTorrent, a thing that runs the underpinnings of much of the internet. And he thinks he has a new idea which could be really good for payments and cryptocurrency. I'm just curious, I'm guessing no, but did anyone on the show, did they ever do any home mining? Did you home Bitcoin mine, buy one of those coin ones, any sort of stuff?
Yeah.
It looks like maybe you did, Naomi? Cool.
Yeah, so I got an ant miner. I actually got set up by Marshall Long, who's like an OG miner in this space, and it's
cool.
It's always at a loss. I use it as a heater. So in winter, I just turn it on upstairs where it gets real hot. I don't even do it myself. Actually, sometimes I do. I'm part of a pool, but then I also have it up for rental on mining rig rentals. So and I charge a huge premium, and it's labels like NBTV mining rig. So if people want to mine like with my miner, they can for a huge premium, and surprisingly, people actually do. So it's kind of interesting. It helps me keep the house warm at least. I wouldn't recommend people invest in mining equipment to do it at home unless something drastic changes. So I'm interested to see what happens with Chia.
Yeah, so if this really is easy enough, would any of you set up a little chunk of space on your computer to try mining Chia?
Maybe.
I mean, I guess so. I'm curious, so Brady, do you think that is an attractive narrative for newcomers in the space, being like, hey, I can get in early on this thing and I can do it, as opposed to what the blockchain may also be capable of powering? What's your take? Do you think that's still a nice hook for folks?
If you think like me, yeah, I think for example, like this, if you're if for example, you're a person who wants to get in, but you don't want to leave your digital footprint anywhere that you're involved in crypto, you could mine some Chia and then, presumably sell it for other cryptocurrencies maybe you're more interested in. Think of the 15-year-old, wonderkind who's sitting home in the suburbs, wants to start playing with cryptocurrency. Dad won't give him $100 to buy Bitcoin and he doesn't have a credit card anyway. He could start mining some Chia on his big gaming computer and then maybe start playing the market. So yeah, I see the chance, giving people a chance to do some work to get into this larger world could be powerful. I mean, who knows, but it could be powerful.
I guess we saw a little bit with Filecoin at launch, right? They had that network. Was that similar, where they had a network where you could store certain data sets and be rewarded in the fill token before it hit launch? I guess that would be similar in some respects.
You can do it now, yeah. Totally. It's very much like File token kind. I just have a feeling Filecoin's harder.
Yeah. So you looked at this new white paper that Chia published. Besides the home mining stuff, what stuck out as something that might differentiate Chia from some of its other competitors?
Well, the other really interesting thing about Chia, I mean, this is a whole separate topic, but they are looking to be as regulatorily friendly as possible. So they're pre-mining a giant pile, 21 million Chia tokens for themselves, and then they're going to get publicly traded as soon as they can. And so in the early days, at least, a share of Chia stock will be much like a Chia ETF, really, because that will be their main asset. So it also will present a way that people could get involved in cryptocurrency on public markets as well, with public disclosures and public accounting. So that's also, there's a lot of ways in which I think Chia is kind of opening things up to normal people if it turns out they have a good product, which who knows.
Yeah, I think that's the big question. I've mined some Monero through an app on my computer, to sort of putting some of my resources towards that, and it was going to a specific cause, so it was not sort of a free thing just running in the wild there. But I think like we were talking about, even in terms of Joker Stash and stuff, what's going to matter is the accessibility of this and how complicated it's going to be, and whether that kid in the suburbs who wants some latent passive work to get some Chia can actually set it up in a way that's sustainable.
Got it. Well, we're going to leave it there with Chia and the future, the return of home mining. Thanks, guys. This was a fun show. This is The Hash. I'm Zach. We got Naomi. We got Ben. We got Jen. We got Brady. We'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, check out All About Bitcoin at 3 p.m. with Christine Lee on CoinDesk TV. And I'll see you later. Thanks.
Talk to you all tomorrow.
Peace.
Bye.